Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for still being here. We were thinking that since there's going to be a barbecue after this session, that there would still be more people around than usual. And I think that's true. My name is John Joergensen. I'm from Rutgers University Law School in Camden. Deb Ranard is presenting with me. She's from Capital University. What we're going to talk about today is some privacy issues, mostly to do with law school websites. I'm going to talk a little bit about privacy in general, the kinds of information you can have on a website, what we should do with it, and a couple of ideas on how we should think about information on our websites in order to make good, intelligent decisions about how to treat it. Deb Ranard is going to have a somewhat more technical discussion about protecting privacy with your data. While I was getting my, well, why don't I get this going here? Also, just as a shameless plug, this is the Linux desktop with OpenOffice running. I don't know if you can tell much of a difference between this and PowerPoint, which is intentional. Wonderful product. When I was getting ready to do this presentation, I had a moment of panic because I had already told John Mayer that I would do the presentation. And I started thinking about it, thinking, well, you know, a lot of this stuff is kind of just common sense that I really want to talk about. Am I really going to have anything to say? And then I remembered what I thought of when I first came up with this idea. I had been speaking to a faculty member. I had made the mistake of still being near the circulation desk at about 10 minutes after 5. And made the worst mistake of answering the phone when it started ringing. And it was a faculty member who had traveled to another law school and was with a moot court team. And they were trying to find a student at the other school. And she said, you've got to help me do why they called me at, you know, but that's another issue. But they did. And they said, you know, this guy he gave me a physical description. Said he's, you know, with the Moot Court Society. He said something about this class he was taking, and he's in this other club apparently because we talked for a few minutes, and he's a student at the law school. Can you find him for me? Can you get me a phone number for him and maybe an address? I have to get in touch with the guy. And I was able to do it. I went to that law school's website. I started poking around, and the student directory was open to the public. I found the information. I found the guy's name. I found him as a member of the Moot Court Society. I knew I had the right person. I got a headshot, and I got a phone number. And at the time, I thought to myself, you know, I really should not be able to do this, I don't think. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it. And so a lot of these things probably are kind of common sense. A lot of these things are probably things that many people don't consider, even if they are common sense. We just don't get to it. So it might be worthwhile having a discussion about. Just as an outline, useful websites make all kinds of information available. It always, however, raises certain privacy risks. And it can become something of a complex issue because privacy is, in fact, a relative thing. There's a continuum of privacy. You can have records that are so important that you keep them locked up in a filing cabinet. They're only in print. Or they're locked up on a server that's not on the network at all. On the other end of the spectrum, you have broadcasting. You know, releasing information to a news service, having it on television. But in between those two extremes, there's lots of middle ground. And for most of the information we would want to put on a website, they fall into a huge gray area, which we should actually think, you know, have some thought about. So the thing is, for each category of information, where does your information fall? So useful websites have things like alumni directories, faculty directories, student directories, courseware, syllabi, internal memos. All of these things you would want on your website, but for each one of these things, you would probably want to have different security measures in place some on an internal website, some you would want open to the public, some you would want restricted just to people registered to a certain class, some you would want restricted only to certain administrators. So, privacy risks versus publication needs. So, for like a student or an alumni directory, on the one hand you have fear of stalkers and other intrusive types. On the other hand, you have facilitating communication. You know, information for prospective students. Some of that stuff you would want restricted, some you wouldn't want restricted. Course material, you know, restricted course material for current students. You may not want prospective students to get a hold of. You may not want the public to get a hold of. So, another one of the things that really brought this home to us at Rutgers is that we publish administrative law decisions and New Jersey appellate court decisions. And it's something we didn't really think a whole lot about at the time when we first started doing it. These are all public documents. They're in the public domain. We wanted the public to have access to these documents for what we thought were very good reasons. I'm not sure why that just happened. Well, we'll get back to that. We wanted the public to be able to get a hold of these things for what we thought were very good reasons. There we go. But we started getting objections from members of the public. We had these things available to everyone. They started getting Googled. And shortly after they started getting Googled, we started getting letters and phone calls, and worse than that, of course, letters to the dean and phone calls to the dean. We were very unwilling to pull these from the web because they had to be made available to the public. But we also felt that some of these people did have a legitimate semi-expectation of privacy. I mean, the thing is that these people were litigants in cases, and they never thought about the fact that any decision that was made and put out by an administrative law judge or an appellate court judge is going to be in the public domain. And traditionally, although it is in the public domain, gets published in the court reporters, the general public never had access to this material before. And so things that nobody anticipated started happening. You know, one of the first stories was the case of a policeman who was discharged from his civil service police job due to misconduct and was now looking for jobs with security companies and not being able to get a new job because of us, because companies that were going to hire him started running Google searches on the guy's name just to see what came up. His administrative law appeal came up. They found out all kinds of things which he still denied, but he had still lost his job. He blamed us for that. Another story about a person involved in a divorce, and it went on appeal. The appellate court judge probably included a few more details than he may have had to. This person was very embarrassed, and again, this was coming up on Google. And his friends called him up and he said, you know, there's all kinds of information about your divorce that I just found out about. Again, this is not the kind of thing that you would want to broadcast. It's something that we had no particular interest in broadcasting to the public. And in terms of that continuum between having it locked up and broadcasting, having it available on Google was far too close to broadcasting for these people's comfort, certainly, and it didn't really serve our purposes either. Our purpose was to make legal information available to legal researchers, but that wasn't happening with the instance of Google searches. This was just the general public finding out salacious information about people who happen to be litigants in New Jersey. That has nothing to do with the reason why we had the website available. And it was also making our dean complain, asking us to do something about this. So what was our solution to this? I started thinking about it in terms of a continuum, and I thought, well, these are public documents, very important for legal researchers, so we are not going to remove them from our website. However, we have no interest in publicizing these people's names on Google, so the solution was, of course, to block them from Google. That can be done very simply with a small file called robots.txt, which just, you place it in the directories where your documents are, and it will prevent any kind of search engine from indexing those. Search engines are very cooperative about that, and it's a standard formatted file. So we put one of those robot.txt files in all the directories where we have court opinions. They're no longer Googled. They're all dropped from Google at this point. So now, somebody goes to Google, and they want to do New Jersey administrative law research. If you plug that into Google, you'll find our main search page for administrative law opinions. If you want New Jersey appellate court decisions, you can find our search page on Google. But you can't get to individual opinions without using our search engine. So it's a trade-off. But in the case of this particular kind of material, it's a useful trade-off, and it falls into that continuum of privacy where we think it needs to fall. It's not being broadcast, but it's still available to the extent that it's useful for the purposes for which it was originally published. Of course, we still get complaints from litigants who don't want their things available at all, but at that point, they don't have the law on their side, because it is a public document. The only complaint we are getting significantly now are from people who want their things published. I just recently got a letter from somebody who won a case getting their civil service pension back, and they want to blame the entire state of New Jersey, and they were very horrified that their opinion was not available on Google. So again, there are still letters to the dean. But the dean is on our side. So, the rationale for the policy, the continuum of privacy. Some want their material locked up. Others wanted their material broadcast. Rutgers wanted to facilitate legal research. Finding our website on Google is useful for research. Finding individual decisions on Google is not really a good search strategy, and it doesn't really help us with our goal. So we're happy with the way we have things at this point, and the litigants can live with it. So my final question to you is, for all the material you have on your websites and all the material you'd like to have on your websites, where does your information fall, and how should you treat it? It's something that, again, there's a lot of common sense that may apply to this, but it's something that I suspect is ignored more than it should be, and something that people should think about. So, if there are questions, I'd be happy to take them on my half of the presentation now, and then Deb Ranard will do her half of the presentation. Yes?
When your students do things like fill out their name and address and email address on something that may end up on the web, do you get releases from them, or do you warn them that it's going to?
No, at this point we do give them some options. Our student directory is blocked from general public access. Other students are able to see things, but even with that, they have the option of designating some information to be hidden. And even the hidden stuff, though, which actually this is good because here's the continuum again in practice. When students look at the student directory, they can only see information that has not been marked by the student as hidden. If you log into the system as a faculty or staff member, you'll still see all of the information put in, and you'll see little hidden tags if somebody's, say, put their home address and said they don't want their home address published. That'll still appear to me when I look at the directory logged in as a faculty member. But a student logged in as a student will only see just maybe their email address or whatever they said is not to be hidden.
Yes.
And what was that robots.txt file?
Robots.txt.
Is that software you purchased?
No, that is just, it's a standard format text file that you just write and save it. So it's not software at all. If you go to Google, in fact, I was going to show you the text of it, but unfortunately I'm apparently not plugged into the right place to be on the network. So I could show you our example of it. But if you go to Google and go to help, they have a lot of information about how to get things on and off of Google, particularly how to get off of Google, something delisted. And they have very good explanations of the robot.txt file and how it works, and they have very good samples to work with. Sir?
I have a follow-up on what you just said about the students designating some information was hidden. Let's say the student comes and says, well, look, I don't really want the faculty to know what my home address is. Does the student have the option of not putting it in the directory at all, or is the answer, look, you know, it has to be there, and you have to get this information to that person?
For us, I don't think they have a choice about that. You know, for administrative purposes, we need an accurate home address. And just as a matter of policy, our faculty members are allowed to see the administrative information about the students. So, yeah, for that, it's tough luck. But
and do the students know this? Or have any ever inquired about it?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. I'm pretty sure that we haven't told them that. They are told that they can block information from other students to see. You know, by omission. I think they probably ought to be aware that, you know, anybody in the administration or staff can see it. But I don't know if that's explicitly spelled out, though. Anyone else? Another thing about the way we're doing the presentations today, we should have a substantial amount of time at the end. So if people want to have more of a debate about this, I think there'll be time for that. That's kind of how we try to arrange things. So with no more ado, Deb Ranard.
Pass the microphones.
Can you hear me now? Good. Okay. Mine, as John explained, is a more technical approach to the problem. Coming from the IT department at the law school, we come up with the technical solutions for some of the more abstract issues that are involved and try to make those work for people. We also do a lot of education on those issues of privacy for the different departments so that we don't run into issues like broadcasting private names. Types of web security Capital uses. I think most people have gone to a website where it's asked for a username and password or to create a username and password. We have sections of our website where you can go in and chat with a staff member about career opportunities after graduating for Capital. And for those people, you can create a username and password on the fly so that you have an account with the chat program and you can get in and interact with somebody. So that is one way we use the password and sections of the website. Another type of security we use is HTTPS. We have an account with VeriSign, and we have an encrypted section of our website. And when you go to those sections, our username, our web address changes from http://law.capital.edu. It changes to https://secure www.law.capital.edu. And the other thing that happens, and a lot of users are very in the know on this, they look for it now before they hand out personal information. The open key lock on the web browser changes to a closed key lock, so they're comfortable giving information like social security numbers, credit cards, anything a department may require them to input. It is encrypted and it's secure. Another way of securing a website is in-house access only. If it were up to my network administrator, most everything we have would be in-house access only, because at least you've added a physical component to the security. Unfortunately, most law schools are different than undergrad schools. We don't have a dorm facilities. Our students aren't living on campus. In-house access only. We're very much like a community college in the sense that our students come, they take their classes, they study in the library, they go home. So in-house access only is very limiting to our students. There are a couple things we consider so important that they're in-house access only. One of them is the student directory. Although they may need the student directory or may wish to have it other places, we consider that very private information, and you have to be logged on a computer in our building in order to get pictures, email addresses, and that kind of thing about other students in the building. My favorite, in-house access only on a secure server. Not only do you have to be physically in the building, but it's also in an encrypted place on our server. We use this one. This is like the ultimate. This is where you could actually steal identities and really profit from any kind of hacking that you might do. We have symposiums and events that you can register for on our website, and you can put in credit card information. You have to put in credit card information in order to register online for the events. Although we can't make that part of the form in-house only because we want the outside involved. The part where people come in and find those conference registered people and get the information that they put in, that is in-house only, and it's on a secure server. So we try to protect the information entrusted with us as greatly as we can. Our logic was that this is very administrative. Most people wouldn't be doing this from home, and if they are, they shouldn't. So we've had no complaints about that one. Why the paranoia? Security conscious network administrator, number one. He will monitor constantly, and he's a very great network administrator, the kind you really want. He's constantly getting the latest hacking tools and trying to hack into different parts of our website to see what he can see, and will apply a security as needed when it's not there. Number two, the level of personal information. There's a variety of information on our website. Some of it is for internal use. Some of it is for outside guests and constituents that we work with. Some of it just is the information about applying to the law school. It doesn't seem like that would be something that you would, just the name would need to be secured. But did everyone read about the one law school where I think he was the director of admissions, logged into another law school just to get the names of the people who were registering with them so he'd know who he was competing with to get these students? You know, something I wouldn't think it would be such important information. It actually has value, and so we secure that kind of information. Ease of obtaining information if not secure. Goes without saying. One of the tools we use to find out what we're putting out there to the world is a packet sniffer, or a sniffer, or a network sniffer. The students have all kinds of words for it, but what it does is it looks at a location, and anything that it can pull through, the data that's coming through in little packets, it captures them. Our first network administrator was a 19-year-old, and the very first day on the job, he sat in our computer lab. What he wanted was he wanted a new infrastructure for the network. He wanted switches instead of hubs in all the rooms. So he sat in our computer lab for a couple hours and came back and handed me the dean's username and password. What he had done was he had downloaded a sniffer and just waited till the dean logged in. And it wasn't very hard for him to do that. He got what he wanted. The point is, maybe we don't use them, and maybe we don't know what the latest one is. We probably should. But the students know what these things are. And the hackers definitely know the tools of the trade. What do you need to actually steal an account, or steal an identity, or to steal information from our website? You need something that encrypts. Most web-based HTML will try to encrypt at a base 64 level. And I know that sounds like a lot of information. But when we go to this website, I think you're going to see what it does. You need Notepad. It comes with all the operating systems for Windows. And you need a sniffer. And I looked online on Google, just typed in sniffer. And 2 trial versions came up right away that I didn't have to pay anything for. I could download them, and I had instant access to them. So it's not very hard to get these. I'm going to go ahead and open this one up. And we'll come back to it. Okay. The next thing I did was show you what these look like to a hacker. The first time I saw this, I had heard people talk about it, but I didn't understand exactly how easy this was for people to do. So I went in and tried it. Using basic HTML website to pass information. Here's what a sniffer packet shows you. It's kind enough to tell you the authorization is written in BASIC, and here it is. It seems like it's encrypted. It doesn't make any sense to me until I cut it. Paste it in this little converter, which was free, and hit decode. There's the username, abarney, and there's the password, 123456. It was just that hard. Using a form post feature on websites, a lot of our staff, we let them use front page to create web pages. They love doing this. It's easy, it's low tech, it gets things up quickly. But again, here it is. Authorization is basic, and then what follows is the basic encryption. Copy that. Paste it and ask for a decode. There's the username for this person, S. Edersheim, and their password. We were able to pick these things up within 40 minutes of, we had someone on our site who was logging into a basic form. Okay? There's been a lot of discussion on Technoids, if you're subscribed to it, about how horrible FTP is and how some schools are locking down or removing FTP abilities from their universities. Using FTP on a website. Okay. This is from a sniffer using FTP. Yes. The username is staff user. They're logged in. The password required for staff user, and there it is. You didn't even need to have the encryption. It just passes it through clear text. And it even goes a step further, which is really scary. At that point, then it gives them the file structure for the file server that they were trying to FTP into. So now they've really got some information that they can sink their teeth into, and they can go in and pull off quite a bit. Using NTMLSSP, and I don't want to have a really extremely technical discussion, but this is the Windows LAN Management Protocol. This is when you use your username and your password that you've got at the school, and you log in. Now, this, Microsoft says this is secure, and it is in some ways, because it doesn't pass your password back and forth. So this is better than some of the other things we're using. A couple of problems with this. Let's see if I can find it in here. It tells me what computer I'm logged on to. There's computer 1. I saw some other information in here that made me sweat a little bit. Tells me who I'm logging in as, and he has a little subdomain set up for the adna folder. So it tells me what domain, what computer, and who I am. It doesn't tell me the password, which is better than nothing. But when you're hacking websites, this gives you enough information that you can then use another hacking tool to crack this user's account. And if you're high enough up that you actually have access to several servers, they will be able to eventually. I think it takes generally 3 tries for most hack cracking tools once they have your username and where you're logging in from in order to get your account. Using SSL encrypted website, this is when you see the https://secure and the rest of your username or your web name. And the key code is locked at this point. I don't even have a point here to begin to try and figure out what is what. It's an encryption algorithm that without actually being at that secure web server, I don't have access to it. There's nothing here that makes sense to me at all. Obviously, our preferred method, although not everything can be in this method, we want to have things that are out there that web bots could easily get to and have searched and other tools. And that was basically my show and tell. Did anybody have any questions about that? Yes?
My first question was on the one user that you were showing us how the sniffer captured their password. You know, it didn't, I don't know if it was the world's best password, but it certainly wasn't as bad as some out there you see. How long did it take the sniffer to capture that password?
It isn't cracking the site, it isn't hacking the site, it's simply bringing in the data that you're sending out there on the site. So it took it.
You're saying it took the data from the package. You mean at some point the password went out in unencrypted form?
It was encrypted by base 64, which you saw how easy it was to break that encryption.
Oh, you're saying the encryption isn't strong enough because it's base 64 instead of say base 128.
Right.
Got it.
Right. Any other questions? Yes.
What about some other privacy issues relating with the lab, like privacy statements, or we were thinking about, we have various forms. We don't put in a lot of information, but just name, email, phone number, and so forth. We have about, instead of a thank you response, have some sort of privacy statement and so forth.
What, like, there's no guarantee that what you're sending us? I'm afraid if we were very truthful about some of these forms that people are using, that we would scare off anyone from logging in. So if we know we're asking for something that's secure, I would rather just have them assume that it is secure, and it would be, rather than try to
I also
be as honest.
as a matter of I should speak over here for the microphone. I think as a matter of policy, privacy statements are always a good thing, and you should always put them in. We use them as much as possible. And it's just because if somebody's coming in from the general public and wants to fill out a questionnaire that we have, or a request for information, things like that, people, I think, are often hesitant to reply to those if they're not sure what's going to be done with that information. And so just, if you want people to respond to you, I think they're always a good idea. And so I personally do it all the time.
Yes.
A comment, kind of a broader question. You talked about credit card transactions. The way we resolved it was to partner with someone.
Yes.
Instead of being responsible for the information, we went through a service that actually handles online donations, but wanted to make money. So they let us do like COE processing and stuff, which is really a super affordable way to go because it was just a percentage cost of actual money made and not upfront fee.
Right.
The other thing was, we put together this display in the building. It's a plasma screen, interactive, that has a building directory in it. And it was really interesting to see the reaction of some faculty members when we did that, because it has a faculty staff directory as well. And even though you're already in the building, and this is accessible on the web, but even though you're already in the building and you know you want to see Professor Jones, and you type in to see where they sit, now it shows you where they sit and it shows you the picture. This was directly after the shooting at law school a year ago, a year and a half ago. People were totally paranoid, but now they could be found. In the past they were safe contact on that phone office, but now they could be found. Do you experience any kind of similar sort of paranoia about your own faculty and staff, their safety, and what's being told about them on the website, etc.?
We keep ours academic, and they have their email address, but not their office number. They have to come in the building. What will be published about them is their name, their email address, which, thanks to spam, we're now reconsidering that, and anything that they've published, books they've written, presentations they've given. That's the limit of what we put out.
Yeah, for us as a marketing issue, we, like all our faculty, we have a page for every faculty member, and we want as much information about them as we can, just to show what they're all about. So that's something that we feel is very important. But email address is optional with the faculty members, as is photograph. Photographs are encouraged, but there are several faculty members who do opt out of that as well.
Oh, yes. We have faculty members' office phones, their email address, and for most of them, their photographs online. For students, we have the university will put up their email address, phone number, address, and the student can opt out of it at any time to any degree. But we were going to put photographs of librarians up, and some of them objected because another program on campus, which is very technologically involved, had photographs of all of their students.
Students, not staff.
Right, all their students. And there was actually a rape case in the community where the person was picking them out of photos.
So we definitely don't publish students like that, but it could happen with that.
Yeah.
The same kind of thing with that.
That's why I don't have the librarians up, because they simply didn't watch it after they heard that.
I can tell you that we're very proud of our faculty, and I believe that they signed something with their contract that we have the right to use them for publicity. So we have one faculty member who would, if he was given a choice, he would remove his picture, but he isn't given a choice about that. And he's a very high-profile faculty. On top of all that, he writes many books.
I have a question of privacy sort of from the other side, which is, does everybody require students to log in to every computer to use it for any purpose, like using online catalog or something? Because then it's, in our institution, we're wondering about privacy and that record keeping because we have a state statute that says, at least as far as libraries go, you can't, reveal the names.
Well, I'm at UNC Capitol Hill, so it's another public school. All of the computers that are maintained by the library, anybody can log into, especially the catalogs, because we're a public institution. There is also a computer lab in the building which is sponsored by the university and maintained by them and paid for by student funds. Those they have to log into, which is the same all over campus. The rationale being that the students are paying for it, and they shouldn't have to wait in line while some people walking off the street start to use it.
We have laptop requirement. So we have 10 public computers and that's it. They log on because they forgot the computer.
Yeah, I know at Rutgers, our public access terminals no one has to log into. And so, but even with that, there are web lockers that run on our servers. And, I think next door they're having the discussion on Patriot too. And I think that's a real issue that we all need to review now, because I also know for a fact, this information is going into our web logs. And up until now, we've never felt a real need to think about the web logs in that way. There's something that, our policy was always never to snoop into them. We keep them there for diagnostic purposes if something goes wrong with the web. But I think we really need to think about deleting them on a regular basis, just as a privacy issue. And again, like with Seattle, we have laptops that people have to log in with. We have student labs where people log in. And in theory, I think it is quite possible to trace what searches they're running on the OPAC. And we shouldn't be keeping that information.
Now, I'm at the University of Toledo, and, it's not, we're kind of in flux, I guess, as to what we're doing. What I'm trying to implement is a system. Now, I should say that all the students, when they're in the lab, have their own login, so they're logging in with computers. The public, we have a couple of online catalog stations. We have several computers that are available to members of the public. Those are all generic logins. So what I've tried to do with those things is to lock those generic logins down so that you can't do very much with them when they're in there. We also have staff members who are currently using generic logins that were department-wide, and I'm actually trying to get away from that because then there's not as much accountability as to who was on the computer and how did they get logged in if something goes wrong.
Just kind of question for people here. I don't know our technical. Well, I don't have the answer to this. Maybe somebody does here. Our public machines are set up so that when a student logs in, it's a brand new blank desktop for them each time. And when they're done bringing their business and they log off, they come back. They weren't able to, modify, say, the desktop or save files. Does this, and someone else also done records of, say, where they have been on the web or what their service had been? And then we can use that. This is an XP feature that goes into XP Pro.
We have a little script that runs in the machines that deletes profiles every night.
Okay.
Because it's another danger is if you don't do that, the profiles are going to be hard. Yeah, so every time they log in, it builds a new profile. And that includes their favorites, their IE history, all that.
And we've had students searching for the appropriate materials on public machines. We discovered that they dropped them down and our email they were accessing. Design stuff.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming.